This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, without a doubt, he's one of the most popular players in National Hockey League history with a legion of fans around the world. One of the most beloved Canadian World Junior stars and arguably the hardest hitter in National Hockey League history. In this very special episode of Real Talk, we welcome former National Hockey League star and mental health advocate Jordin Tootoo, filmmaker Adam Scorgie joining us as well just hours before the world premiere of their new film. This episode of the show is made possible by Alberta's top online real estate school. You can find them at relo.ca. That's RELO.ca. If you're sick and tired of that desk job, if you're sick and tired of being stuck in a cubicle, you don't feel like you're helping anybody with what you're doing, and you're certainly not getting anywhere with your own financial independence, take a second to check out relo.ca. You can find more about their pre-licensing courses, including the Alberta Commercial Real Estate Bundle and the Alberta Residential Real Estate Bundle. They've got the experts to help you kick off your career on the right foot, to ace that exam, and to get started in the direction you need to go. With the promo code Ryan100, that's all one word, Ryan100, they'll knock $100 off each of those bundles. You can learn more details online. That's relo.ca.
I made the Team Canada roster, became the first Inuk to ever represent on an international stage.
McClevitt. Here comes Jay McClevitt. Cross ice for Tootoo, scores! Jordin Tootoo, 2-0 Canada. Goal scorer is getting a standing ovation from the crowd here, and he is already Canada's favorite player.
And what that World Juniors did for him was show the world that he was coming. That was an era where no one his size really played the way he did. Like no one at 5'9", 185 pounds, 190 pounds, brick shithouse, played hockey the way he did, like through you. That's what you want on your team, and that's what every GM wanted. That's what fucking Barry Trotz saw in him. That's what David Poile saw in him when he drafted him.
That scene from Tootoo, which makes its world premiere just hours from now in Fort Hall at Rogers Place. What an honor it is to bring in the filmmaker Adam Scorgie and the star Jordin Tootoo. Welcome to the Real Talk studio. It's nice to have you here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, kind of fun.
What do they call you here?
Jespo.
Jespo. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm a nickname kind of guy.
Are you Toots?
Yeah. Toots.
All right, Toots. Well, welcome. What are we calling you, Scorgie? I guess your last name is your nickname.
That's
in
kind
a way,
of it.
isn't
Scorgie. That's always
Knucklehead.
my kids call. Yeah, that too. That works.
Yeah, I was kind of getting a kick out of watching you watch your own highlights on the screen here in the studio. Does it still kind of get you going?
Yeah, in my eyes, I'm like, who the hell is that guy? I'm 5'8", $180 soaking wet. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's all about the mentality. I grew up in an era where you don't take shit from nobody, and having an older brother, Terrence. I was a young boy around the block, so I always did things that were out of the ordinary to hang out with the big boys, So I was always, I don't want to say picked on, but I was the I guess the guinea pig in the room, Jordin, if you want to hang out with us, you got to do this. You got to run into the boards as hard as you can. And back then it was, we didn't have plexiglass. It was the cage.
Right.
So I learned to leap a little bit. So I get most of the cage when I would go 100 miles into the boards and try break them. But, playing in the NHL, the boards are there's a lot more give in them. But I love, back in my junior days, playing in the old rinks, Swift Current, Moose Jaw, the boards were like cement walls, and I'd go in there and crush these youngsters.
Yeah, this was for you coming. I mean, first of all, an incredible achievement, and I want to talk about your legacy and how young kids see you in your home community and where you're calling home now, and of course you make your way across Canada. And I mean, I've witnessed it when you're out on the street. We had a chance to hang out a tiny little bit this summer. People love seeing you. It feels like it doesn't matter what team people cheer for, they connect with you in a way that's really very cool. But the first Inuk player to ever play for Canada, right? The first Inuk player to ever play in the National Hockey League. Was there almost when you headed to the Brandon Wheat Kings in 1999 from way up north, so to speak? Did you experience almost like a culture shock?
Oh, fuck yeah. Absolutely. Going, a kid coming from nowhere, going to the big city, that lifestyle, totally different than what I experienced, jumping on a skidoo or quad to go to the store, not seeing street lights, didn't know the etiquettes of the southern life. There's this little Inuk kid who was a loose cannon, I guess, growing up with not a lot of structure, and then coming into the big city. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I just kind of lived day by day and didn't quite realize how much of a influence I was for my people at that age, because I was a young guy myself, not really knowing how much more is out there in the world, because I grew up very isolated. And I mentioned the horse blinders, not knowing how much more is out there until I left. And it was a culture shock. After 2 weeks of living down south, I was homesick, because I didn't have the capability or abilities to go out in the bush whenever I wanted, or go out on the land, or go fishing. Everything was structured, I got to get a ride to school. I gotta, it was quite interesting, to be honest.
You talk a lot about the land. Can you give us some insight into how the land relates to your personal health and well-being, both growing up and in the midst of some of the struggles that we'll talk about today, and even today?
Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, for a lot of Indigenous people, the land is where we feel safe. It is a place where we are connected with our ancestors. It's a place of healing. It is where we feel comfortable and content in our own skin. And unfortunately, my father, Barney, who was born and raised out on the land, had really instilled that in me from a young age. Spending a lot of time out on the land, hunting, providing for the family. And when I left home, it's one of the main things that really made me homesick was I wasn't able to escape reality, I guess, by going out on the land and kind of forgetting about everything else and just being present. Throughout my hockey career, there's a lot of things and places that I never imagined seeing as a young kid. But I knew throughout my hockey career that getting home was very important to me, because it's where I was able to debrief and to just kind of get away from society and that fast pace of life, getting out on the land and just being present and living in the moment. And still to this day, it's a key factor in my mental health. When I go on my speaking gigs, I talk about the land a lot and how it has allowed me to mentally be sane, I guess. It's different for everyone, but I tell people, go out in nature. We all live this structured, fast-paced life, on a timetable, and we live we open our calendar every day to see what's going on, and when you're out on the land, it's about survival, and how can I help you survive? You know, it's like team. You're a team out there. I mentioned quite a bit. You know, when you grow up in remote communities, in the community, there's a lot of dysfunction going on, and family members butting heads, but when you get out in the bush or out on the land, all that goes away, because I need you to survive out there. And it's teamwork. Why isn't it the same in our communities or in the city? You know, it's Scorgie and the film crew saw it firsthand when they came up to our annual fishing derby. You know, we'd go out on the land and we'd see other community members, and I know for a fact, you know, not every family's going to get along with each other in town. And when we were out there, you know, certain family members, because the whole community's out there, and it's like nothing ever happened, because it's survival out there. I need you, and there's no bullshit.
We needed them bad as city folk out there. Without them, we would have, to describe, I think I have some photos, but we take snowmobiles, and those, he called them Inuk's limousines, but it's like a big sled with all of our gear, 2 to 3 hours into the middle of the tundra, nowhere. And then right when we get there, they had their little cabin. Yeah, it's right here. So those are tents. And he's like, yep, this is where we're going to set, this is where you guys are going to live for the next 3 days, right? And we're like, well, why here? They're like, oh, the snow's firmer. And if you would have just given those tents to us to set up, that would have taken us probably the whole 3 days. But thankfully, Tootoo's like, boom, they had it up, and the sled's in the way to prevent the wind and pull like this. Like, it was, I can see, having been up there now, getting the opportunity with Jordin's family and the community to go up there 3 times, why there is a romance up there for those that have worked up there and have come down. Like, oh, I always cherish my time up in Rankin, and because the community support, because it's hard living and the weather is so harsh, you are brought together in a way that you support each other that you don't have here in the city. Like, a lot of people will live in a neighborhood for 10 years and don't even know their neighbor 3 houses down, right? Whereas there, you need each other to, and as us city folk trying to film, like, we needed all the help of the Tootoos. We're like, here's how you do this. And he said, even when we drive back on the sleds, there'd be like other people, they'd got a caribou and they were cooking, and they're like, oh, come sit down, come eat with us. Like, it was, and Jordin's like, oh yeah, we barely know them, but you come by and you get to eat. It was an unreal experience, something me and my team will cherish forever.
Jordin's story is one of like incredible athletic achievement. Obviously, a beloved player, as we've covered. Also, a story of great tragedy. We'll talk about your brother and your family and some of your personal battles with mental health, with alcoholism, and it's a compelling story. It's phenomenal to see you here today. I mean, just and to see, I almost feel like you've had this one career, and then now you've got this calling. But as a filmmaker, I mean, you've sort of put yourself on the map for telling compelling stories, not just hockey stories, but you're the producer of Ice Guardians, which is a very popular film, a documentary on the role of the enforcer. Obviously, you told Phil Heath's story very well, Mr. Olympia, Breaking Olympia, that film. As a producer, as a filmmaker, how did you know that this was a project, the Jordin Tootoo story, that you really wanted to work on?
So it all came together kind of serendipitously. Is several people kept reading Jordin's book, and they're like, man, have you read Jordin's book? It's incredible. Like, I knew him as a player, like as a physical player, but I had no idea. And everyone's like, Adam, you need to read his book. You need to, like, you should tell his story. And I was like, okay. And then our director, Hammy, who I did the Bailey Experience with and Michael Bisping's doc, he was like, man, I just read Jordin's book. Like, we got to try to reach out to Jordin and tell that story. He's like, I think it's just so incredible. It moved me. And then we reached out to Jordin, reached out to Mike Watson, his business manager. And there, at the time, Jordin wasn't super set on. He's like, I don't know if I'm ready to share that yet. We'll look. And then Hammy was so inspired, our director, and he was like, I'm going to write something. I just want Jordin to read it. And then that was when he sent that. It was like talking about the feeling of flying back to Rankin, like coming from these 2 different worlds and then coming back home, and it being such a vast difference for him that he was like, okay, that is exactly what I felt when I'd fly home. Like, I want to meet you guys. And then we met with Jordin, And when you hear his story and how open he is, and part of his healing is he's so honest and open about everything. And as a filmmaker, that's when you know that they're willing to share, and you see that in the book, that's what's gold. Because people want to go, sure, we want to see the athleticism, the sports story, but you want to connect on a human level, right? And when Jordan's so open to talking about that, and his family is so brave to let us in and do that, that's when we knew we had something truly special. And as I said in some of the interviews today, it changed us. Like, I don't think we're the same people having gone, like, to go on this adventure with him and his family and to be exposed. I can't get through the film without crying. You saw in Calgary when he had the sneak peek. It's Jordan's like family now, and his family, I care about them dearly. So when I see like his best friend Troy that he grows up with getting emotional, or I see them, like, it's incredibly moving. So we knew going in that we had something special, and that's why it's taken quite a long time. We've taken over 2 years because our director was like, I'm not letting anybody touch this. I'm not rushing this. Jordan is way too special.
Why there was so much physical.
And people ask me to film, they're like, which one's your favorite? What's on this? And I'm like, you're not supposed to compare them. It's kind of like children, right? Like, which one? But this one is incredibly
more
special,
often than
and
not,
arguably
I
the most
sleep at
moving
their
story
place.
we've put
But
on
when
screen.
they slept
Yeah,
at my
we
place,
Johnny, you're going to go out of
we
order here.
knew
We have another
something
clip
was
ready to roll here. We were going to do it. Let's roll it now, because this is, Jordan, you're talking about kind of your willingness to talk about things. And I want to pick your brain on that. But again, here, just hours ahead of the world premiere of Tootoo. Here's another look.
Time, you know, I didn't share a lot about my personal life. Guys keep their mouth shut because they don't want to expose themselves, because you're just a piece of meat. You're trying to do everything in your power to stay in the NHL. But it's like as soon as I walked out of that tunnel and got on the ice, nothing else fucking mattered.
What was fueling you? What was banging around between your ears? What was driving you? What was haunting you in those WHL years into the National Hockey League years?
Well, the game of hockey definitely allowed me to, be someone that nobody else knows. You know, when I stepped on that ice, all that, the bullshit, the dysfunction, it was left outside the dressing room before I walked into the arena. And, when you're in the public eye, you're scrutinized by everything you do. And for me, hockey was my outlet. It was my safe place, being on the ice, because nobody can tell me what to do or how to be. You know, I was in my own element. Growing up in Nunavut, 10 months of the year, it's winter. So being on the ice, it was a safe place for me to unleash the fury, I guess. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of, I don't know what you want to call it, dysfunction or drama behind the scenes. But that being said, people would always ask me, man, Jordan, like, how do you take on these big guys? Or, you have no fear. And I tell people, I'm like, as a young kid, my job was shoveling snow before school in pitch black, minus 40, minus 50, walking the streets, not knowing if there's going to be a polar bear or a pack of wolves or a wolverine. Literally as a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kid, you're walking these streets, and when you're coming around the corner, I had a lot of fear as a kid, going to shovel these steps, and I tell people, like, why the hell would I fear anyone on the ice when I grew up overcoming, what if there's a polar bear around the corner, and just going for it. I think those experiences really allowed me to be the player that I was, and the fact that growing up in harsh conditions, it's survival mode every day. You got to be mentally tough to live in the Arctic, and people don't understand, how harsh it is. Just literally, walking to school, walking to the arena in minus 40 without the wind chill. You know, it could get up to minus 60. There I am as a young 10-year-old kid with my hockey bag on my back. And Scorgie, you know, the lake that is in the middle of town, walking across that lake, head down, walking into 60-kilometer winds, you know. Those experiences allowed me to mentally overcome a lot of hardships. In today's generation, you know, if it's too hard, I'm not going to do it. You know, everybody has half a foot in the door waiting to hear what the outcome is going to be. Forget about that. Dive in there. You know, it's okay to fail. That's how you learn. You know, it's okay to not be perfect. Nobody's freaking perfect in this world. You know, the perception that a lot of people put out on social media is that they live this awesome life, this perfect life. And, you know, the problem is it's all fake, you know, and I'm as real as they come. Yeah, I've gone through a lot of shit, but I use that as fuel to be better for tomorrow. You know, I'm okay with saying, yeah, I messed up, or I'm not the best. You know, the harder you work, the more time you put into honestly yourself, you know, looking after yourself first and foremost. Growing up, my first probably 5-6 years in the NHL, I was constantly pleasing people, you know, making sure everybody else around me was happy. Then I'd go home, and then the battles would begin mentally. And so for a lot of years, I fought those inner demons, and the game of hockey really brought me to a place where I am today, you know, with the help of my teammates, with the help of, you know, Mr. Barry Trotz, Mr. David Poile, caring about Jordin Tootoo, the person, and not just the hockey player.
Tracy was wondering, how old is Jordin? She says he's wise beyond his years. You're 41, right?
41.
Yeah, you shared with us earlier that you actually walked away from when you decided to retire. You had a contract offer on the table. I want to ask you about that. When you knew it was time to hang him up, why you hung him up, the journey since, and I want to get into the process of putting this film together. It's absolutely powerful. It's Tootoo. Its global premiere is tonight in the city of Edmonton, Ford Hall at Rogers Place. There's still a few tickets available. We're going to put the link into the chat for our YouTube live audience, and we'll put it into the show notes on YouTube and the podcast. We're going to get into some more of Jordin's story and what a powerful one it is in just a quick second. I want to let you know that this episode of Real Talk is happening with the amazing support of the team at California Closets that is the best at what they do. I don't know. Can I say, are they the Jordin Tootoo of closets? Or like, I don't know if you're looking if you're looking for a big hit, if you're looking to create space.
Create space.
Oh, Scorgie, I got to get you on staff.
Yeah.
California Closets can create space like nobody else with their custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. Whether it's your boot room, your laundry room, your primary bedroom, could even be your garage. Their garage storage systems are absolutely incredible. Their team of designers and installers can work with you and your budget to ensure that you get the most out of your living area, and it all starts with a free design consultation. You can book that today at californiaclosets.ca. Hey, it's Thanksgiving weekend, and our friends at Friesen Brothers are ready to make sure that you have the most memorable family gathering in a long time with their Thanksgiving premium smoked meats offered by Catering by Friesen Brothers, a special Thanksgiving favorite, the whole smoked turkey. Get this peach and Prosecco glazed gammon ham, and they do a whole smoked brisket as well. You can order for your celebrations and make sure that you're getting the taste and quality that Catering by Friesen Brothers provides. Each product has a fixed price. They advise the number of servings. They give you all the instructions on how to reheat and perfectly carve this centerpiece. You can check out more at cateringbyfriesen.com.
Love what our friends at Athabasca University are doing. Their board decided at the beginning of September to reduce tuition by 10% for all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students across Canada. This is part of the university's ongoing efforts to enhance access and equity for Indigenous students and also adhere to the principles of truth and reconciliation. If you'd like to learn more about Indigenous supports and services at Canada's Open University, make sure you check out athabascau.ca/Indigenous. And the more than 6,000 members of Civic Service Union 52 are calling for you to have your say. Your opinion matters as part of their Edmonton for Everyone campaign. They've just launched this website. They're basically calling for smarter spending of those hard-earned tax dollars. These public service workers are the ones that are answering the 911 calls, the ones that are ensuring that the Metro Edmonton region has accessible transit, public libraries, they're staffing rec centers. You get the idea. And as Edmonton continues to grow at a rapid pace and resources are being allocated to those frontline services, they want to make sure that we're avoiding spending on projects that do not align with the priorities of the community. You can chime in and have your say at edmontonforeveryone.ca. So it's the,
shout out to our boy Cam at California Closets.
Yeah, you know Cam as well. Cam Johnson, him and his team, and he was for background, Jordan. He was the one that produced that EO conference in Calgary in July that you spoke at. People, entrepreneurs from across the country coming in to hear what you had to say, and I don't think I'll ever forget that night at the theater where you just basically held court for like an hour and a half. You could have heard a pin drop as you shared stuff that's very difficult to talk about. I actually sent you a note after. I don't mind saying this publicly, but my best friend in the world had died by suicide 3 weeks before that event, and I think you're just finding that out right now, Adam. Yeah. And I was just trying to kind of keep it together, and we're talking about suicide, and I was really having a difficult time, but I kind of was leaning on you without you knowing it. You had the incredible courage to talk about your dear brother and that immense loss in your life. How long did it take you, or how did you get to a point where you were able to go up in front of a room of people and talk about the death of your dear brother?
Yeah, it took a long time, to be honest. You know, when you grow up in a home where there's a lot of silence, you know, our home, we didn't talk about day-to-day things. And I'm sure a lot of households back then, you know, and even still to this day, you know, there's a lot of silence. So for, you know, my brother passed away in 2002. I was 19 years old. Not a clue of what my future holds. And the fact that, you know, with suicide, you may never know why. And for many years, I wrestled with the thoughts of what could I have done different. With mental health, it doesn't discriminate. You know, people don't realize how powerful the mind is, and when you internalize and learn how to internalize as a youngster and through your teenage years, those layers just keep building up. And for me, hockey allowed me to release a lot of that anger and those buildups of emotions and experiences, and so my mentality was like, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna chuck the knuckles, and you know, that weight will be lifted off my shoulder. Well, I'd go home and after the game, and my mind would start wrestling. And so for probably 5-6 years, I wrestled with a lot of emotions mentally after losing my brother and the person who I idolized and who I looked up to as a father figure, as a mentor, as a coach. yeah, I contemplated many times giving up the game of hockey. I contemplated taking my own life a few times. But the fact that I had the hockey world behind me allowed me to see life from a different perspective, I guess. And I didn't really grasp that until my coach, Mr. Barry Trotz, pulled me into his office numerous times. Numerous. I mean, I can't even, over 100 times, you know. As a young kid, as a young professional hockey player, you start to wonder, like, why always me? Why are you always picking on me? You know, yeah, I made a shitty play, but I didn't have clarity mentally to understand why Trotzy was pulling me into his office and trying to have conversations. I shielded a lot, right? I talked about it in the documentary of how many athletes, you know, tend to leave everything at home and not talk about, because you don't want to expose yourself. You know, you're just a number.
Especially a guy like you as like an antagonist and like you don't want to give the other guys fuel or fodder, right?
Yeah, you know, like I was a role player. I was, you know, a kind of bubble player. So less is more. You know, like what team is going to want a guy who's all messed up?
Sure.
You know, off the ice. Yeah, I'm doing my job on the ice, you know, getting the fans going. And that was a crutch that I used for many years when I would get called into Trotzy's office, you know, like, I'm doing my job, coach. Like, what more do you want? You know, who cares about what I'm doing off the ice? Well, I started playing more minutes, and Trotzy would be like, Toots, you know, you don't have the same energy in the third period, you know, like, let's talk about, you know, maybe changing a few things off the ice. And to me, it was like, yeah. I'll don't worry, I'll get to bed at 10 o'clock, you know, rather than 1 or 2 in the morning. But as a youngster, you don't really see that far. And, you know, I lived in a bubble, you know, like my life was just, it was, so much was going on. And I just used the rink as an escape. And then I started realizing my teammates weren't hanging out with me. You know, I'd send out text message or call boys, hey, let's go out for dinner. And well, they knew what that eventually would end up as, you know, 2-3 o'clock night, and then having to go to practice the next day. Well, you know, for me, it was, I just outworked everyone in practice the next day to overcompensate. We call it playing guilty hockey.
Guilty, yeah.
And you see that in the corporate world, you know, and, you know, doing a little extra more to not get noticed, you know, skating a little harder, battling a little harder. But yet, my teammates knew where I was the night before. And a lot of them started pushing, you know, kind of backing off, and then that's when I started realizing, like, shit, like, am I not a good influence, you know, because of my off-ice actions? And then I started isolating myself and hanging out with locals, you know, guys who didn't really know the game of hockey, or
like fans in Nashville,
and going and started ending up at these dive bars, and it got to a point where I was like, you know, I took Scorgie to this one place in Nashville I used to hang out at. It was called the Brown House trailer, just one little trailer, little dive bar, you know, and I'm sitting there at noon on a Sunday watching football, here I am, probably one of the most popular guys in Nashville, hanging out at this little dive bar with, locals who've been, going there for 30, 40 years. I got to a point where I'd look around and be like, man, like, what am I doing here?
Right.
And that's where a lot of addicts end up, like they end up in places where you would never imagine seeing yourself. But in my mind, they had the best burgers in town.
You did have a burger there.
What?
But I also would walk in there and nobody knew who I was. And I'd buy basically the whole bar. Only 15 people can fit in this little place, but the tab was open when I was there.
Wow.
And it was a place for me where I felt I didn't have to put on this facade or I'm representing the Predators, but in here I'm just a regular Joe Blow, and got to the point where things had to change, and I owe a lot of credit to the National Predator Organization, Mr. Poyle and Trotsy, for believing in me and giving me countless of opportunities, because Trotsy shared with me, his family dealt with alcoholism, so he understood what I was going through.
What insights did you get into Jordin's life and his upbringing and his kind of what was making him tick, his struggles and his victories by the interviews you did with his friends and family in Rankin Inlet, talking to people in Nashville? I mean, the film's incredible, the number of people that you talked to, but what insights did that give you into him?
It really let you see. It's weird. We were just talking about this before, is that you never want someone to go through these experiences to make them a better person. But when they do come out on the other side, like Jordin did, it makes them, it's like a diamond under pressure, right? So going up to Rankin and really experiencing, like you said, like people take there's infants riding on Hondas, as they call them, or machines, going to the grocery store, and there's no paved roads. And to see, like, when we were up there, we're like, how did he ever come from here to playing for Team Canada and in the NHL? You really see where, when Jordin did tackle his demons with drinking and his addiction, that he was able to overcome it, because he could overcome things there. Like he said when we did the screening in Calgary, when he's like, sure, Donald Brashear is a big scary man, but he's not a fucking polar bear, right? Like, so when you got that insight from his family, that one of the biggest things that was revealed to us, and it's still, this is what gets me emotional when I watch, is that a lot of people, including his friend Troy and his family, they'd never talked about like Terrence's situation or some of this generational trauma. So the first time you've seen the film, Troy says that when he says, sorry, I know it's been years, but I'm still emotional because I've never really talked about it, right? We really realized for a lot of people, going on camera and talking about this was the first time they've maybe talked through their emotions and what it meant to them. And that was when we knew, the director's like, Adam, we've got something so special here that we have to be very careful, because this can really help other people. So we have to walk that fine line of going in and being honest and raw and true to the story, but also honoring, to make sure that we honor Terrence's story correctly, Jordin's story, and the Rankin community.
Mm-hmm. Incredible comments here in our live chat. Lauren's watching. He says Jordin's experienced enough grief for 2 lifetimes. 80s Fanify is watching, says, I'm having flashbacks right now about my uncle who was an alcoholic. He would end up at these seedy bars. He would often get robbed, and yet still he would defend those places. Kimberly says there needs to be more supports for these young men that are going into the National Hockey League. And you might just say young people into sports, or young people into celebrity, young people into big fat paychecks. You obviously are adored by not just young hockey players, not just Predators fans, but I would imagine by Indigenous youth around the world for your accomplishments. What advice do you give young players, including those from remote or underrepresented communities who aspire to play pro hockey?
Well, first of all, I'm truly humbled and honored to be considered a role model for our Indigenous communities. I never envisioned as a young professional athlete that I'd break down barriers and open doors for our people. So I am truly honored and fulfilled on a daily basis by sharing my journey, and hopefully I can inspire one individual when I go on my speaking engagements to choose a different path, because life's all about choices, and in adulthood, it's on you. Do you love the person you see in the mirror when you wake up every morning? If not, it's on you to make those changes. Far too often we're waiting for somebody else to get the job done. And that was me for many years prior to sobering up and in sobriety. Probably the first 4 or 5 years, I was looking for somebody else to fix the problem. And I tell people, when you perfect a certain way of life and it becomes normal in your eyes, and for me, when I perfected that life of using and going to work every day, thinking I'm doing my job, I realized that in order for an individual to be comfortable and content in their own skin, you got to do the work, whether that's putting pen to paper, seeking help. For a lot of us men, we grew up in homes where men don't show weakness, men never surrender, men don't cry, men don't show emotion. So we carry that into adulthood, and
well, especially when it led to that was part of your reason for your success on the ice.
Totally, and so it got to a point where, you can do all the therapy sessions you want and all that. It was reconnecting for me with the land and my culture and my traditions, and simplifying life, and understanding that in order for anyone to move forward or to succeed, you gotta face adversity. You gotta face hardships, and those are, for me, was a lot of childhood experiences, and trying to forget about, and prior to sobriety, drinking. I wasn't a everyday drinker. I was a binge drinker. So when I got the green light, it was go time, and but I drank to forget, and then in sobriety, you go from perfecting one way of life, and then now you're changing. It actually gets harder.
I want to ask you about this. So next week on the show, we've got a psychologist. She's going to be joining us. A lot of people are observing Sober October this month, and I'm just curious to know, like, how if I guess it's a really personal question, but you don't seem to be afraid of those. Did you find it tough to get off the bottle? Do you find it is it still, like, to this day, is it tough for you today to not drink?
For me personally, I knew it was time. When Trotsy called me in and Mr. Poile, that's honestly, it was a drive from my condo in Nashville to the arena, and I was still not feeling 100% from the night before. Eyes are glossy. I'm sitting at the red light, right? The last red light before the rink, and I'm staring at this red light, and it felt like it was like the longest light in the world, because I was so afraid to walk in those doors. But it was at that moment where I said, this is it. It's either now or I'm probably not going to be around for much longer. I'll probably be 6 feet under. And it was at that point where I knew in my heart, in order for me to live a fulfilled life, I had to surrender, and all I could think about is keeping my brother's legacy on, and because, you know, he inspired me every day, and he allowed me to fight and earn what was put in front of me. Nothing ever is given to you in life, and that's these kids nowadays, you know, if it's too hard, I quit. Like, that's the mentality. And you know, when I chose to accept the help that was offered, I didn't know if I was ever gonna lace them up again, but I knew deep down inside I had to be somewhat selfish and say, you know, in order for me to live, I have to change. And I walked into Trotsy's office, and I broke down, and I said, where am I going? I need to go now, or I won't be around much longer. And it was from that point on that I knew I had to be done with doing what I was doing, using alcohol. Yeah, it's a daily grind, but I'm choosing to live this life, and nobody else can tell me otherwise. And for me, yes, hockey has always been an outlet and a place that I feel safe. But it's my home life that has allowed me to fulfill my dreams of being a husband, being a father to my 3 daughters. Yeah, I never hoisted the Stanley Cup throughout my years of playing in the NHL, which is every kid's dream, is to lift that Stanley Cup. But I choose to look at the fact that I get to wake up every morning and I see 3 Stanley Cups walking out of their rooms, and to me, you couldn't ask for a better life. You know, my wife Jennifer, yeah, we have our battles. You know, we're a married couple. Everything is not all fine.
You guys
and
don't
dandy.
agree 100% of the time.
That's weird.
You know, that's life. But you know, I'm able to tackle situations with clarity, with a clear mind, and have a better understanding of it's not about me. You know, it's about giving and allowing my wife to be the best person she can be, to be the best mother, to be the best wife. But I also have to understand that in order to get that, I have to do my part in being a present father, in being a present husband, conversating. Yeah, I'm still working at it. Trust me, I'm not the best communicator.
I think you do all right.
Yeah, I think.
But that being said, I wouldn't change it for a thing. I wouldn't have what I have today if I didn't sober up. You know, my wife and 3 daughters are my pride and joy. You know, this hockey was one part of my life, and this is the next thing that I'm trying to not so much perfect, because no one's perfect in this world. You know, I don't give a shit who you are, whether you're the CEO or you know, living this great life. We all fight a fight no one knows about, and until you're comfortable and content in your own skin, you're not gonna live the life that you want to.
How about this from Tracy, who says Jordin may not have raised the Stanley Cup, but he'll be remembered for things far more important than that.
Wow.
That's a pretty awesome comment.
I thought that was beautiful what you just said there, Jordin. The 3 Stanley Cups, and make me reflect. I have 3 kids too, and that's you know, you try to be present as a father and do that, and it's making you're again. This film has affected me so much in this journey with Jordin. I think me and my team are better people going through this, and just even hearing you now, brother, I'm like, okay, I can go do better when I get home. I gotta make sure I listen when my kids want to talk to me. Constant struggle is the thing, is that people, it doesn't end. You're not like, okay, I fixed it today, it's done. It's constantly working, constantly trying to be better. And I think that's a great great message. That me and my team learned going through this. That's why us documentary filmmakers do this. It isn't for the accolades of, because documentary filmmaking, despite what people think when they see the red carpet events, it isn't driving Ferraris and living a luxurious life. It's going on these great adventures and being a better person and sitting down. There's interviews in this doc and many others where after the interview, I can't stop thinking about it for 3 or 4 days because you're reflecting so much on what somebody said when they're sharing and giving you moments of their life and sharing experiences they have. There's ones that literally I can't stop sleeping. I'm like, man, what that person said has just really impacted the way I look at things. And it's why we continue to go on these journeys to try to capture these stories.
Really incredible stuff. Just the live chat here. I wish you could read every single comment. Tony here, she says Jordan's just a champion in so many ways. He doesn't need the Stanley Cup to prove he's a winner. I mean, obviously you'd love to have won it, but hey, I've had a chance at my buddy's funeral, attended thereby, in my mind, one of the greatest players ever to not win the Stanley Cup, his childhood teammate, Jerome McGinley. I think there's different stories, yours and Iggy's, obviously, but two incredibly tough and skilled players who won over fans around the league. There's certainly a parallel there. On a lighter level, you think the Oilers are going to hoist this year? I got to ask you. Right across the street, tough home opener against Winnipeg. What do you think?
Wow. I mean, the best teams win, right?
Yeah.
And you can be the best team throughout all the regular season, 82 games, number one. But come playoff time, and I seen it, I experienced it. You think you're gonna jump to a new level once playoff starts. Nah, you gotta that starts in game one of the season. And Edmonton fans, yeah, I know it was a tough game, your home opener, but it's an 82 game. As long as you get in. You never know, right? So I'm not gonna say yes or no. They're gonna win. Whoever the best team is in the finals. I don't know. What do you think?
What do you
Jespo?
think, Scorgie?
That's it.
I don't want to jinx him.
Yeah.
We can get Johnny in on the. Johnny's just got this like Cheshire grin on his face right now.
I hate all this talk. This is just bad mojo. Right now.
I don't want to say. Hey, look, I want them. Obviously, I'm super biased. I want them to win. I'm a diehard Oilers fan. I was there in Game 7. I was working with the Oilers. I was down in Florida filming. Some of that footage you've seen is I was working with Mojo and them. They were down there. We had to stick the cameras in their face. It was hard. That honestly felt really hard because it really felt, and no discredit to the Florida Panthers, but it felt like the wrong team won because as soon as you left the arena, Fort Lauderdale, you couldn't tell that their team had won the Stanley Cup. There wasn't a banner downtown. There wasn't anything going on outside of the arena. That city was dead. And you saw the parade later. There was, I think Spit and Chicklets are missing curfew. Something posted there like, imagine bringing down the Stanley Cup down the main strip and nobody knows what the trophy is. Like, it really felt like it was the wrong.
To be honest, the Cup's got to come back up north of the border here.
Yes.
Come on, boys. Let's go.
Yeah,
somebody.
Yeah.
We need the Cup back where it belongs in Canada.
Yeah, Spit and Chicklets was doing their Stanley Cup final coverage from this studio. They were hanging out in here and they were looking out our windows and we were talking about, and this is we probably fucked it up for everybody actually because we were talking about how cool it would be to watch the parade from these windows. But so I don't want to get ahead of myself either. I'm going to take a cue from you. You're the only person in the room that's skated in the NHL. But I will say this is I don't think that there's a team that's hungrier for a win than the Edmonton Oilers. So we'll see if they can.
I'd agree with that.
Can satiate that appetite. I want to shout out Erica, who's keeping it real in the live chat, says her husband turned to alcohol to cope with traumas experienced in his career as a first responder. She says he was an EMT, a firefighter, and a police officer. Wow, Erica. She says it takes a huge toll, but he's been sober for 5 years now, and I want to give a shout out to him. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Good for him.
Good on you, bro.
Yeah, man, and to Erica as well. I mean, it takes a village, right, and family, and I just want to maybe close with this. There was Johnny was showing us some, and thanks for all the footage, by the way, Adam. We appreciate that, courtesy of Scorgie Productions. The film is Tootoo, but there's that sign, that big billboard up in Rankin Inlet. It basically says, what does it say? The home of Jordin Tootoo, I think it says. And maybe we could close with you telling a powerful story. You said you had kind of a low moment. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for a lot of years, I'd come home and I would look at that sign as I'm driving into town and ask, like, internalize, like, why me? Like, I'm just a regular community member, you know, and who is basically living a double life. You know, with my addiction to alcohol, I'd go home and it'd be a big party for 2 weeks I was home, and, you know, not realizing how big of a role model I was for the young kids. You know, I was in a state of selfishness, I guess, you know, where I didn't give a crap about what other people thought about me. You know, I'm playing in the show, I come home, I would tell my childhood buddies, tell your significant others you're hanging out with me for the week, and not realizing, you know, they all work 9-to-5 jobs, and here I am pulling them away from their families and their jobs, you know, and so it was tough when I sobered up. I actually went to all my buddies' places and apologized for my actions to their significant others for and making amends, and it got a lot of weight off my shoulders, and ultimately, you know, I didn't want my buddies to feel awkward when I came home, because in sobriety, obviously things change, and I'm not coming home to party it up, you know, but I also relayed the message to them, hey, this is my decision. I don't want you to feel different when I come home. You be yourself. If I feel uncomfortable, I'll leave the situation, and it's got nothing to do with your actions, but ultimately, if you disrespect me and if you put it in my face, I'm gonna have to cut you out of my life. And I had to do that with a lot of people, not in my hometown, but, like, you know, friends who I thought were my friends. You know, you find out who your true friends are pretty damn quick when you change your life, and ultimately it's about respect. You know, for any man, this is what I've experienced in sobriety and therapy sessions, was you know, for any man to feel love, we demand respect. And by that, I don't mean dinner on the table, the house in order, laundry done. It's all the little things, you know, appreciating the little things. And for any lady to feel respected, they demand love. Well, for a lot of us men, we don't know how to show that, you know, physical touch, conversations. A lot of us men grow up in homes where, you know, we didn't talk about nothings. We didn't talk about our feelings. Well, I've learned that, you know, I'm married to a Sicilian lady, and we all know Italians love to talk, and they talk really loud. But I'm truly grateful for her to be in my life, because it's really opened my mindset as to being present with her, being affectionate. You know, I never seen my parents ever hold hands or kiss each other or hug. You know, my wife and I, we'd go to public places. She's like, geez, why don't you ever want to hold my hand? And I'm like, hun, everyone knows we're married. Like, who cares, you know? But, you know, slowly started understanding, you know, women need physical touch. They need conversations. And yeah, as hard as it was for a lot of years, and it's still hard for me, you know, but it's more like you got to be a team, you know, and I know what team is all about. And yeah, we're going to have different views. We're going to have different sayings, but at the end of the day, when we come for dinner, showing our kids that it's healthy to have conversations and being present.
In the chat, you know, Sharon Morin says, we need more of this way of thinking. She says, this is a real person and real talk. Sylvia says, boy, that apology is the sign of a real man.
And how about this? You've accomplished something very few people do. Lauren says Jordin has won over an internet live chat to positivity.
That is the Stanley Cup right there. Right?
There's another cup for
wow.
you, brother. Yeah. Hey, listen, it's absolutely awesome to have you here. It was I told you before when I met you, I was a huge fan of you as a player, but I'm a bigger fan of you as a person, as a man. And everything that you represent. You inspire me. You inspire this audience. I know you've inspired Adam. Congratulations, Adam, on a remarkable film. The global premiere, which is also obviously the Canadian premiere of Tootoo, goes Friday, October 11th. If you're listening to this show live or sometime today, that's tonight at 7 o'clock in an absolutely amazing venue in Ford Hall at Rogers Place. It's going to be up on that massive screen. What a cool place to screen a film. I don't think I've ever seen a film. So I've never seen one. I don't know if they've ever done that before.
No, they tried it once with like a kids film. So we're the first one that's doing it with like a big audience.
Yeah, and what a venue though, and you can get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah,
in there.
we were already over 500. I was going to get you to click on that link to see because I think we're over 85% sold.
Yeah, if
you
click,
will it show me? It'll show you a thing there where I think it says see over 80%
more than 80%
sold.
are sold.
Like it's going to be sold out. I wouldn't wait to the door. And I got to give a shout out to this whole event is being put on by the Boucher group. It was Nicole and David Boucher wanted to do something special for Jordin because they think his story, they've got their foundation that supports Indigenous youth sports. So they were the ones that were really they forced us to get the film done sooner. We weren't planning to do anything until the new year, but they're like, let's do something special for Jordin. Let's really get the community involved. So then we talked to the Oilers, and then the Oilers stepped up with Oilers Entertainment Group to put it in Rogers Place. And I'm very, very thankful we can do this for the local community here and show it in that great venue.
Yeah, Erica says, I think this is the first time in months that no one in this live chat is fighting. Imagine that. Jordin Tootoo got everybody to stop fighting. That's not the way it used to be. Make sure you follow Jordin on Instagram as well at JTootoo22, and you can follow Adam there as well. We'll link to it in the show notes. Real Talkers, I want to thank you for being a part of this. Hang out here for a couple of seconds. We have a tradition as we wrap our shows. You guys can just sit back, enjoy your coffees. We're about to fire things up in a big way.
Sounds good.
But first, I want to remind everybody that these conversations happen with the support of amazing partners like our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy. They are leading the charge on Canada's green energy revolution. Nobody installs more solar in Western Canada than Kubi Renewable Energy, and that means that they're always hiring as they grow and grow out of their Kamloops office, their Lethbridge office, and then their headquarters in Calgary and Edmonton. You can check out the careers link today at kubienergy.ca. And Complete Care Restoration is proud to be working in the town of Jasper right now, helping residents and business owners get back in action as soon as possible. They're working on the demolition, the rebuilds, fixing that smoke damage, and everything else that comes with bouncing back from wildfire. Nobody does it with more diligence and more experience than Complete Care Restoration. If disaster strikes your home, your business, your community, remember the name Complete Care Restoration. As we wrap up every week here on the show, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, we open up our email inbox. We give you an opportunity to give us your hottest takes. These are all real emails that we've received this week based on some of the content that we've heard here on the show. It's a feature that we call the Flamethrower, and it's presented by our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. This one here from Ronnie, who is listening to us talk to Andrew McDougall, Stephen Harper's former director of comms, and he says, Jess, well, I'm just writing in to say very simply, I don't want an election before the end of 2024, which is why part of me is hoping that pro-aggression is the thing that happens to avoid it. The outcome of the next election is all but assured at this point, and I can't see any harm in delaying the inevitable coronation of Pierre Poilievre. I really dislike Trudeau, says Ronnie, but Poilievre is smarmy. He's a politician corrupted by Ottawa, and don't think for a second that a conservative government under him will be any better than what we have now. Ronnie says, I just had to get that off my chest. How about this one from Wendy, who says, Just, I was so upset with what Pierre had to say, Poilievre that is, on the October 7th Day of Remembrance. I was watching the news and I saw the comments about that increasing conflict involving Israel and the Middle East. Why on earth would we encourage Israel to strike Iranian nuclear plants? It's only going to cause more suffering and hardship and put more innocent lives at risk. Canadians are known through the world as peacekeepers, and we should never engage in rhetoric that fan the flames of war and division. She says we look to our leaders to bring people together, to work collaboratively to find peaceful solutions. We must never give up on peace. That from Wendy out of Calgary. How about this one from Andrew, who didn't like our October 7th show at all? He says, Jespo, I'm writing in to criticize your uncritical platforming of Musa Kaskas. The anniversary of October 7th should be a day dedicated to the victims and survivors of that terror attack, and I found your first segment with those Israeli gals, Miri and Maytal, describing the emotional toll appropriate and moving. But when I heard you say you'd also have a Palestinian representative, I was open to hearing a hard conversation about mutual humanity and the physical and emotional damage being done to both sides. Instead, I was shocked to hear the gish-galloping greatest hits of college protest anti-Israel factoids. Two traumatized women talking about their lived experience is not an appropriate counterbalance to such propaganda. That from Andrew. And how about this one from Coreen, who says, Jespo, I did some frustrated vacuuming after listening to your September 27th Flamethrower. That letter from Brent about teachers always wanting more money, giving air to people who have chosen to not listen to your guests, not actually hear what they're saying is, well, frustrating to say the least. Education workers are not asking for more money for wages. They're asking for proper supports of care for everybody's children, and the mental health of our staff, of teachers, is not even being considered. As in healthcare, we're seeing an unprecedented exodus from the education professions. Coreen says, I want to sign off with a cheers this Friday to educators who so badly need this long weekend to recover and look at other options. That from Coreen. You can fire up your Flamethrower anytime to talk at RyanJesperson.com. It's proudly presented by the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. Have a very happy Thanksgiving weekend, everybody. We'll observe the Monday stat with our families, and we'll be back live with Tuesday's episode. You're not going to want to miss it. We've got those two wildfire experts, the ones that were testifying in front of that parliamentary committee in Ottawa, talking about what they did wrong in Jasper. You'll hear them here, only on Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supreme